You name it, I've probably drawn it. The Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force. I created some characters like Bishop, and I created a book called Wetworks, which had the very first Filipino in it.
Okay, yeah.
His name was Joel Salvador Alanday from Pampanga. And actually in one issue, I even had him fighting with a vampire, and he was surprised, and so he said, Jesus Maria Josef. And we didn't translate. And then I did a book called Stone, which is about Philippine myths. And now I've come back and I've done Spawn, I've done Batman, Superman, and Incredible Hulk again. And now I'm going to do my own stuff again.
So what kind of stuff are you currently doing besides the Hulk?
I've been a military, I like the military genre, the soldier and how and why he fights. So I'm going to do a military book like that, and then I have a vampire book that I want to do. But first we're going to come up with a book called Non-Humans, which is basically a science fiction book. Science fiction is actually my first love. If I didn't get into comics, I probably would have been writing in science fiction or maybe in films.
Okay, so I think I read, was it that your father was in the military? Is that where you get your inspiration for?
Yeah, I'm a Navy brat. So,
okay.
When I was in my preteens, we were on an island called Midway Island, 1 mile by 2 miles only. And there was only about maybe 74 families. So we were there for 4 years, so we got to know everybody. And the best thing about that was that about 1/8 of the island had cement, the rest was forest. And those were restricted areas, but for a 12-year-old boy and his friends.
Sneaking in.
Yeah. In fact, in order to join our club, you had to find your own bayonet shovel.
Is that the initiation?
Yeah.
That's pretty intense. So we were born in the Philippines then?
I was born in the Philippines, and then when I was 2 years old, we moved to the States, to New Mexico, and then around the west coast of the Pacific Islands.
Okay, and so I also Will has talked to you about your teaching in the Philippines. Is that still going on? Are there any new students coming out of there that are making it out in the comics world or anything like that?
The school doesn't exist anymore. I decided to have a family and bring them up over here. But a lot of the infrastructure that we had, some of my teachers are still there. A lot of the students are now working professionally in the industry. Some are still working because we couldn't work through Federal Express or the internet.
Right.
A lot of them are still working in the Philippines. But some of them have moved over here. In fact, we might be on the verge. We're still talking to some people, but we might be on the verge of sometime maybe towards the end of the year of restarting the school over here on the state side.
Oh, over here. Okay.
Yeah,
and just for all students, or?
Yeah, there's still there's a lot of interest in comics right now, but there really is no way for kids to formally make that bridge, to make that journey. They basically have to come to conventions and hope that their level is okay, that what they can do works. But unfortunately, the reality of that is an editor can only give a job that he has. So the Hulk editor can only give the Hulk book. And so if you draw a lot of pretty girls, you're not going to get that book. That doesn't mean you're bad, but that's the only book that he has. So I'd like to set up like what we were doing. I had a studio in the Philippines where the good students, we graduated them into the studio, and the studio actually was a working studio connected to the DC and Wildstorm.
Okay.
And so I basically produced books. So they would give me a book to produce, but then I would find the artist, and we would basically just do the whole book for them. I'd like to start that up again, because that studio atmosphere is a great way to then, when you learn at an institution, you learn a lot of theory and stuff. But when you get into the actual workforce, it's a whole different thing, and a whole lot more different questions come up. And so that's what I hope to do with the school. That's what we did before, and that's what I hope to do again, where because of my connections with all the companies in comics and even in animation or film, get artists and train them to the standards of the workforce, get them that job and get them in the work.
Okay. And in 2008, when you did the interview, you mentioned that you kind of wanted to work on something with all Filipino artists and writers. Did that ever come to fruition? Or
I'd love to. There's so much mythology in the Philippines. Actually, there's even just so much history in the Philippines that, believe it or not, that even a lot of Filipinos don't know.
yeah, it's true. Like, there's been a recent resurgence in like films.
Yeah. And actually, one other bit is that, okay, everybody knows about samurai,
Yeah.
the cowboys and Indians, the knights in shining armor. Well, as we now know with history, a lot of the mythos, a lot of the romance that we know today didn't actually really happen. And the reason that it is for that is that a lot of creatives like me during those times back in the past created these stories. I mean, the way I put it is, some of them. But see, the way I put it is that, there were some people, as in all societies, that weren't macho enough to become a soldier and fight in the wars, and some people, just didn't have the stamina to work a farm or anything like that. So a lot of people then found out that, hey, it's a basically boring, mundane, feudal life. So I can go from town to town telling interesting stories that I make up, and people will pay me. They'll feed me. I can make a living being a lazy bum telling...
It's like oral stories.
Yeah. And so they found out that the more fantastic your stories that connected to what the human condition was at the time, like for instance, King Arthur never existed, but everybody during that feudal time in England hoped that there were lords that were noble, and so people started spinning these stories that there really is, and it's called Camelot,
right.
And everybody wanted to hear that, so that story grew and survived through the decades. Now, unfortunately, in the Philippines, and I have to consider myself responsible, we didn't do that. When I tell an American that Magellan discovered the Philippines, they go, "Oh yeah, I think I read about that." And then when you say, "Well, Lapu-Lapu, a Filipino lord, killed him," they go, "No way." But then they Google it and they see it in the wiki and they go, "What?"
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it amazes them. And then, and which is natural, then they have all these questions like, "Oh, so whatever happened to that guy? When the Spanish, I heard the Spanish came back to the Philippines, so did he fight with them again, or what happened? Did he lead a crusade, or?" Well, we don't know. We don't teach that, and that is a hole for us creatives to fill. Again, just like, all the mythos that we know about what we think we know about the samurais never really happened. There were some that were really noble like that, and some who fought for their lords, but not all of them. And a lot of them were pretty ruthless. But you spin this mythos, and even though it's just stories, if you think about it, almost every Japanese that you know grows up with this feeling that he could be that noble. And he's Japanese, and so therefore it's natural for him to be that noble, and that's what we need in the Philippines. We need stories. We need heroes. We need an identity. I mean, I remember when I was growing up as a teenager in Hawaii, I said, "Okay, what's the Philippines?" My parents, they're just normal working people. They didn't really have the stories to tell me. I go to the library. There are no books. Try to watch TV. There's no nothing about the Philippines, and so most of my friends are Japanese, so I became a samurai. Because but the point is, as a teenager, and I'm sure a lot of Filipino teenagers, when they become teenagers, they search for that identity. They want to be somebody, and so I think it's up to us creatives to do like comic books, to do TV shows, to do movies, to prop up real life heroes. To give examples for for young Filipinos to strive to be someone. In fact, I'm proudest in my life so far of. I went into comics to do comics. I always wanted to do art. It was only until about 16 years later, I went back to the Philippines on my own, just to try to figure out what Filipino was, what the Philippines was, and to learn Tagalog. Before that, I didn't know Tagalog, but now I can speak Tagalog. And I went there, and I found that there really wasn't anything even there to grab a hold of. And then all these kids started coming up to me. A little kid named Lenil Yu, a little kid named Jerry Alangilan, a little kid named Philip Tan, who now are big comic book pros today. And I took their challenge of training them and getting them into an industry. And only then did I understand that those guys looked up to me. And to really boil it down, the only real reason they looked up to me was that they liked a lot of my stuff and admired my stuff in comics. And then when they found out that I was Filipino, it made that connection for them that, uy, pwede din ako.
Yeah.
I might be able to do that too. If Whilce Portacio, who's just a regular guy like us, can do that, maybe I can do that too. And that's what all of them were telling me, that just the mere fact of me being Filipino and almost as young as them, not being an old guy, it inspired them. And then there I saw the power of inspiration. And I think we really, really need more of that. And that's why I've been trying to network with almost as many Filipino professionals around the country, from ILM, from Pixar, from DreamWorks, Marvel, DC. Did you know there's so many Filipino artists in Pixar?
Really?
Did you know they have
I had no idea.
Did you know their group has a name for themselves?
What is it called?
Pix Noise.
Pix Noise.
That's great,
Clever.
right?
Clever.
That's great. And when people hear about that, that's like, wow, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Of course, that's cool. So I think I'm gathering everybody together, and hopefully we'll one day be able to pull in a project that not only says that, hey, look, kayang-kaya yung Filipino, but that says Filipino. Mm-hmm. Because, the way I put it to people right now is, I make that network list out, and it's hundreds of Filipino professional artists around the world, already proven, day in, day out, they prove that they're international caliber. Now you take all that, and they're all making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for all these other companies like Pixar, right? But nobody knows
Who they are.
Yeah, and nobody knows that Filipinos do that. Now, I would say to businessmen in Manila, if you guys took a little chance with proven professionals, not basta-basta sino-sino lang,
Yeah.
but with proven professionals, and you put up a real budget, give them real time, think about that. If the industry grows in the Philippines because of that, a lot of us would die to go back to do our own stuff. I'd love to be able to go to a Pixar in the Philippines to do Filipino stories about Filipino kids, to inspire Filipino kids. All of us would, But it takes two to tango. It's got to happen, So on my end, I'm trying to inspire and gather together, network out the professionals here to do that, so that one day when all the pieces get together, maybe then the world will understand, how creative and how truly talented the Filipino artist is.